Hello and welcome back to the 12 Minutes with Berç. I'm your host, Berç. Today, we are diving into one of the most critical skills identified by World Economic Forum for the future: resilience, flexibility, and agility. These skills are vital for personal and professional success in our unpredictable and rapidly changing world. So today, I'm very honored to introduce our guest, Jacek Waliszewski. Jacek is an Army Special Operations Officer with extensive experience in some of the most challenging and dynamic environments. He's also a writer and the Green Beret U.S. Army Special Forces Force Officer. His last Special Force mission to Afghanistan was captured in the award-winning National Geographic documentary RETROGRADE, which was nominated for 6 Emmys and made it on the Oscar shortlist. Jacek is featured as Chief Jack. He just recently graduated from Oxford University as well. So with his background, he will be providing an exceptional resilience, flexibility, and agility insights. And it's a privilege to have him here. Jacek, welcome. Our 12 minutes started. Can you share some of your experience from your time in special operations that highlight the importance of resilience, flexibility, and agility?
Yeah, Berç, thanks. Great question. Right. So, what is resilience? Right. Everybody talks about it, but if you really break it down, it's the ability to manage and recover from an event that was expected or unexpected. Right. We all like to believe that we can have high resiliency to that. And in my experience in special operations of almost 20 years now, I can really showcase this in our last mission to Afghanistan in 2021. Where my team and we had trained for a mountain mission. And when we were flying into Afghanistan, it almost felt like it happened in midair. We got the notice that our plane was being turned to a different part of Afghanistan. We were going to the desert, and we were going to work on a different mission now. And all of a sudden, this created a lot of temporary chaos. But what we did is we had 12 men on our team. We brought them together. We had a huddle. We have a policy where you're allowed to complain for 5 minutes, get it out, and keep going, right? And then what we did is we drew from our experiences, because on a 12-man team, there was close to 100 years of experience, right? And so we said, okay, what do you know about this region? When did you do this before? Anybody else do this mission before? And we really drew on ourselves and said, okay, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, and this is how we're going to conquer the next mission. And that's really what resiliency is the ability to draw on your experiences of yourself and others to try to manage a very complicated situation that you did or didn't expect.
So I'm really curious about how did you develop these skills, specifically flexibility, agility, in such high-pressure situations?
So flexibility and agility, really, that matters in the context of what problem are we trying to solve? Because for a kid who's just trying to learn how to ride a bicycle, he has no flexibility or agility. Literally, he's going to fall over into a bush or not even get started because he doesn't know, they don't know how to pedal the bike. And so they have to try 10, 15, 25 times before they actually can even learn how to turn. But once they've done it, you can see amazing things afterwards. They're never going to get off that bicycle in summer. So in special operations, we train hard often and push the limits on purpose. We explore possibilities, we're creative, and we are encouraged to train to failure because we want to discover what piece of equipment breaks and when. What is too far? What can be done with a helicopter or an airplane or a parachute? We want to know what our limits are and how they can be fixed, improved, and exceeded. Because in real life, we don't know what's going to happen. It might be the most simple mission and very boring and simple. And that's great because everybody comes home alive. If it's hyper complex and hyper complicated and you haven't trained up for it, then it's going to be very difficult. So before I was an officer, I was a special forces medic. I've trained thousands of people, and I learned that there's 2 types of medicine. One, the first is tactical medicine, where you don't need to treat anybody because everybody is tactically superior. But then, in an example of flexibility and agility, if someone gets injured, there's 2 medics on the team. Then there's everybody else on the SF team is trained every year to a really high pre-paramedic standard. So that gives me flexibility. That gives me agility. I can turn to the guy on my left and say, hey, put a tourniquet on that guy. And then I can turn on to the other guy and say, hey, start 2 IVs on that other guy. All right. So we've created flexibility and agility onto a team. And you have to be intentional about it. It's not something that's magically going to show up. Imagine, for example, you have a flat tire on the side of a highway, and then all of a sudden you have to change it, but you've never changed a flat tire before on your car. It's going to be a terribly frustrating event, right? And so, yeah, as you're going through life and you're looking for ways to become more flexible and agile, it might be as simple as eating healthy so you don't get sick, or finding a mentor before you need their mentorship for the professional or personal roadblock that you're about to come. These things have to be intentional, and these connections and network and your ability to see the bigger picture is the definition of flexibility and agility.
That's great and very inspirational answer. I just look at some of the a bit on the terminologies, like, the explanations, flexibility, agility, and resilience. They might be considered as a separate, I would say, a skill set. But it's very straightforward that flexibility and agility eventually complement the resilience, especially in a rapidly changing environment. How do you interpret this? What do you think about that?
So yes, I agree that they are interconnected. But between the three, it's really the chicken and the egg question. Which comes first? Which comes last? Do they all happen at the same time? And if resiliency is the experience of your past to draw on, an ability to navigate a problem, and then flexibility and agility are the verbs of it that create options, then truly together they are one, right? But Berç, if I could challenge you, for example, to a push-up competition, how many do you think you could do?
No, I cannot compete, but in general, I would say I would go up to 50.
Okay, yeah. So I'll meet you at 50 push-ups, right? But imagine there's a business, right, that is out there and it has 50 clients. They can do 50 clients a day, and they can manage that just fine. They have everything in place. And they're going to go do that, but then they get a big contract, right? And then the contract is all of a sudden 3,000 clients, all right? They're just not going to be able to pull that off without some major frustrations or growth and capabilities. The same would be if I asked you to do 3,000 push-ups, right? Okay, hey, you and I, we got to do 3,000 push-ups today. Do you think it's really possible?
It's related to the bet. If you put the bet, I could do 5,000 as well. if joke aside, no, I cannot do.
Right, maybe, right? Maybe we could do 3,000 in a day between us. But then the next day and the next, it's just not realistic. The same way it shouldn't be realistic for a business, and the same way it's not realistic for another human, right? You can't do 3,000 of any multiple of stress events a day and expect to be successful unless you've somehow trained for it or set the system together. So the three, aspects of resiliency, flexibility, and agility, it has to be created, it has to be tested and maintained. And really, here's the important part. You have to be humble enough to know the limits of that system. I don't know about your Oxford experience. I mean, we both graduated. But if we had to do all our studies in 1 week or even 1 day, this would be like doing 3,000 push-ups that day. It's just not possible. It's going to be hard, and things are going to start failing around us, no doubt. But because Oxford was spread out over a year, we could manage it in between life, work, and family, just like doing 50 push-ups a day, or even on some days we were doing 5 push-ups a day. It was beautiful. So you can still achieve your goals. And for us, it was, in the moment, it was graduating Oxford. But, you have to have a combination of optimism and realism to really be able to know what your resiliency, flexibility, and agility capabilities are, because you have to make decisions off that.
But this conversation also reminded me a great saying from Martin Luther King Jr. Maybe you might also remember. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. You need to focus on the execution always. And you need to focus on the next step always. You should not stuck into the current time current moment. So within this, the point, if I ask you your advices specifically for the Generation Z, Gen Z, the emerging workforce, they are right now encountering the 27% of the total workforce on cultivating the resilience and adaptability in their careers. What would you advise for them?
Right. So, how do you give advice to an entire generation? So cultivating yourself and your careers is in this generation of limitless knowledge, limitless options, limitless comparison. I would embrace what Martin Luther King said: is don't quit, right? But I would add to that is don't get distracted. And what are these distractions? They're the endless news cycles. They're the Facebook posts. They're the Instagram and the TikToks. And if you're going out there and you're comparing yourself to somebody else, you're always going to be frustrated. And I would walk that back a little bit, because you can't solve every problem, and you shouldn't be solving every problem. That's not your burden to carry. So make a list, check it off as you go, but embracing Martin Luther King's statements is really ask yourself, am I better off or further along in my journey than I was yesterday or than I was a year ago? Right? Because there's a concept, it's fun to say, where if you improve yourself 1% today, then over 100 days, you're going to be 100% improved. Well, the reality is that that's a bit of a lie, right? Because if you do the math with compounding interest and everything else, it's actually 170% improvement. So be simple in that concept, right? Embrace it. And in the same time, don't beat yourself up about it, because you're going to miss the enjoyment in life, right? Give yourself the grace of being resilient and being flexible and agile and enjoying it along the way, because amazing things can happen if you're coming from a place of love and enjoyment and not from panic and desperation. You can really cultivate yourself truly, and your career will follow, and you're going to have a different career, and you're going to have a different career. But as long as you yourself are centered and grounded, everything's going to be great.
Thank you, Jacek. It was great to have you today to talk about resilience, flexibility, and agility. And thanks for sharing your sincere experiences from US Army. So our 12 minutes is ended. Thank you for tuning into 12 Minutes with Berç. Stay tuned for our next episode. This podcast is brought to you by Want Network and Dino, platforms dedicated to fostering innovation and excellence in business. See you next time on 12 Minutes with Berç.